Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the transition track. The speaker we have today has 38 years of human resource experience as a senior human resource manager. He works in 2 different locations and provides great help in career development. Please welcome Podgorski.
Well, I appreciate very much all of you coming out. I think my voice carries, so I don't need a microphone, correct? Yeah. Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I probably hurt this guy's eardrums in the front. That's the way it goes. We're going to be talking today about your unique selling proposition, or in effect, what it is that you bring individually to an employer. And as we look at this, we have a lot of information to cover, so I'm going to kind of get right into it. But my background has been talent management throughout my career, and as a result of 2003 and a layoff that I was involved in, I started the St. Hubert Job and Networking Ministry. We're in our 16th year. We would love to be out of work. That's not happening. We still see an awful lot of people coming to our meetings and events. I also have 2 locations. The 2 locations are in Schaumburg and Elk Grove at the township offices, and we help people with their job search at no cost. So if you feel that any of that might be of help to you, certainly let me know and I can give you some additional information. We are going to be talking about the individuality of our activities that we provide, or we talked to, our keynote speaker talked about the values. And I think that's an extremely important aspect. What is the value that we bring to an employer? And each of us is unique. It's like a fingerprint. Each of us have a uniqueness. Now, oftentimes when people come in and they talk about their occupation, they might talk about, I'm a project engineer or I'm a project manager, and that's all well and good. But what makes you different from all of the other thousands and perhaps millions of project managers that are out there? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about various aspects of those uniquenesses that you can bring to an employer that will help you to sell yourself. And what is the purpose here? The purpose is to beat out the competition. And we know that there are a lot of people who are out there looking for work because of various aspects of what we have in our environment today. We have people who are doing 2 jobs, not 1. We have people who are in positions and haven't gotten a raise in more than 2 years. We have people who are in positions where they're highly stressed out. We have other individuals who are just getting out of school and a little bit lost in how to go about finding a job, but they're out there also applying for work, as perhaps many of us might be looking as well. There is a feeling right now that as of the first of the year, when there may be a great deal of opportunity for bonuses, or perhaps there may not be, but people are waiting now for that January time frame before they start looking for a new job. So there may be a significant amount of turnover that we're going to see quickly in the first part of the year, and that's also going to add a great deal of competition. So what we want to do is we want to talk about what we sell. And the kinds of things that we sell, you already know about. We sell experience, both from the standpoint of life as well as work. We sell skills, the technical proficiencies that we provide in the kind of work that we do, the talents, our natural abilities. And these are things that we have that are individualized. Certainly, many of us are involved with things that are hobbies that we never bring to the workforce and into our jobs. And wouldn't it be nice for us to be able to take some of those talents and natural abilities and move them into the kind of work that we do? But we sell that, or we can sell that, as an aspect of who we are and what we're all about. Competencies, these are the universal kinds of things. These are not necessarily skills. These are the things that apply more specifically, less specifically to any one industry, job, or company, where skills can be very, very specific to even a particular job, let alone a particular company and industry. So we have competencies, and we'll talk about some of those. Capabilities are able, but perhaps not quite at an expertise kind of level. Our characteristics, those individualized kinds of personal things that we can bring to an employer, as well as our traits, Again, some of those pronounced characteristics as well as the personality. So these are some of the things that we sell. Now, when we sell to an employer, we need to make sure that what we're selling is verifiable. And what I mean by that is that we have both the references as well as the material and possibly even the exhibits to be able to show an employer who we are, what we're all about by example. There was a movie that was out many years ago. Perhaps it shows my age. But it was Red Skelton. And Red Skelton was the Fuller Brush salesman. I don't know if you ever saw the movie. It's kind of a cute movie. But nonetheless, what he did, or the sales proposition, if you will, of the Fuller Brush Company was that they would knock on the door, and typically it was a wife or a mother or whomever, it was a homemaker who would answer the door. And when they answered the door and opened the door, they didn't have those little things at that time, and they weren't so concerned about security. When they opened the door, the person would say, "I'm your Fuller Brush man," and the first thing that they would do is hold out a brush to give to the individual to hold, whoever that person was who answered the door. And when they took that item, they knew that even if they sold nothing else to that person, the chances were very good that that person would buy the item that they were holding in their hand. Why? Because they took ownership. The moment they grabbed it, the moment they touched it, they took ownership. And so we need to think in terms of, do we have examples that we can actually hand to an employer that says, this is a part of our uniqueness, this is a part of who we are. When I was looking for work, one of the things that they asked me about was, how big of a budget did I handle as an HR executive? And I would say, well, I can describe that to you, but I also have a copy in my portfolio of an example of the size of budget that I control. And I would say, if you'd like to see it, we could go over it. And they always said yes. I'd reach in my portfolio, I would grab my example. It was not an actual budget from my previous company. I want to make that clear. We don't want to do anything that's proprietary. However, I would hand that to them, and the moment I handed it to them, they took ownership of it. And we then had an opportunity to have an exchange rather than an interrogation of what it was that I did in terms of budgeting. Our accomplishments, can we have those verified by individuals who are references, as well as our achievements, our recognition, and again, our references, as well as documentation. What kind of documentation do we have that we can provide to them about the kinds of things that we've done in the past, as well as our reputation? Does it speak for ourselves? What do we have on LinkedIn? What kinds of things are we saying? What is the message? What is our visibility out there as it pertains to an employer? We know that recruiters are out there all the time looking at LinkedIn profiles. They want to know who we are, what we're all about, and if in fact they don't know us, they're looking for us by the very keywords that we put into our LinkedIn profile in order to identify likely candidates. So we need to understand that our uniqueness has to be expressed, and it has to be visible, it has to be out there, and we have to have a known reputation, meaning that people know of us, they know what we do, they know what kinds of things are special about us, to be able to say to a recruiter, this job may not be for me, but I know Elizabeth, and here's her email, contact Elizabeth for this position, she's perfect for the job. Now, these are things that we can do and that we do well. So what is it that we're expressing in terms of our uniqueness? And that we do well, that we add value in terms of putting ourselves into a role within a company, bringing to success. What are those things that we always bring to success? I always talk about being the go-to person. If you are the go-to person within your company for any specific thing, or in the past you've been the go-to person in your companies, what is that? What is that uniqueness that you bring to the job where every time this comes up, the boss says, you're my person. You're the person I go to whenever this particular issue comes up. And then it contributes to the goals and the objectives of the organization and or the mission of the industry, and show results. Where do you show the most significant results? Meet, exceed expectations, as well as assure outcomes. There's a couple of things that you won't find out on the internet for the PMI. And these are a few slides that I just want to bring to you. we are talking here about branding. There's no doubt about it, we're talking about branding. And here's two brands that I think we'll all recognize. The first one is Ferrari. And in the case of Ferrari, we are taking this now to 4 levels. And I want you to think about this. How are you going to take what you bring to an employer to 4 levels? Meaning that number 1, first level, might be PMI or project manager, okay? But now what after that? And so from the standpoint of Ferrari, the first level is it's a car. It's simply a car with 4 wheels and a chassis and so on. But then we go to the second level and we say, wait a minute, a Ferrari tends to be a luxury car, okay? Now we're saying there's a little uniqueness here, aspect of this particular vehicle. And then this third level is, ooh, this car is known not only for luxury, but also for racing, for speed. It has that particular aspect to it, which is something that a lot of people are attracted to. And the fourth level is high performance, high performance. And so now we've taken the levels here from a car down to a high performance car. And if we look at Enzo Ferrari, who created it, he says, I build engines and attach wheels to them. Well, so what is it that we have in the way of a uniqueness? If we were talking about building a car, what is it that makes that car unique in the sense of, again, offering it to whoever it is? In our case, we're talking about careering and we're talking about an employer. Tiffany, similarly, I'll just go through that quickly, is a retail jewelry store. Simple as that. But if we take it to the next level, it's high-end jewelry. It's not just any jewelry, it's high-end. If we take it to the third level, it's one-of-a-kind, flawless items that they are providing at Tiffany's. You don't go in there and see thousands of one kind of thing. They usually have individualized kinds of things. And the last part of it, in the fourth level, is that their products appreciate. They don't depreciate over time. In other words, their designs tend to stay very, very high in demand. And if we take a look at Kowalski, who is the president of Tiffany, he says, celebrity through product design, perfection, and recognition. And so we also need to think about what our statement is when we go to an employer. So if we look here at project management, let me go back here. Here's just a couple that we could think about. First is methodology, process, planning, and tools. We can say to an employer that we are a project manager who understands the methodologies, the processes, the planning of a project, as well as the tools that are used, software tools, whatever the case may be. But we may need to take it to a second level. And so what makes us unique? Perhaps the financial aspects and sticking to a timeline that gives the employer the understanding that we are in that particular focus. And then the third level, leadership. Leadership in the ability to negotiate when we are collaborating and working with others inside and outside the company, as well as communicating throughout the entire process. And the fourth level, problem definition, resolution, goal attainment. And so what we're talking about here in terms of offering ourselves and our talents and our capabilities and all of the values that we bring to an employer, we're taking it to a fourth level. We're not just project managers, we are project managers who have all of these various aspects. This is not all. This is one person. This is one individual. If we look at the next one, we're looking at an individual who says, my first level is that I'm excellent at not only project, but strategic planning. I not only can handle a project for today, but I can also handle projects that have long-term influence on the company. My second level is that in doing so, I tend to be exceptional, the go-to person on alignments, establishing alignments, both internal and external, as well as handling the full life cycle of a project start to finish. Third level is my leadership capabilities, but I'm not just a leader. I specifically have talents in people, resources, budget control, and measures. And so as a result, I am keeping the entire picture in perspective so that it doesn't go wrong. However, if there is any conflict, I'm good at conflict resolution, as well as I focus on my results, as well as outcome directed. And so what is it that we're selling to an employer? Are we giving them a 4-level perspective, or are we simply saying we are a project manager? If we look at resumes, we see project manager, project manager. But how much are we saying in terms of what the value is that we bring? So when we sell, we're talking about salesmanship 101. To an employer, we are selling what we do, not just what we are, as well as the features and what it does for the customer. We take a bicycle as an example, and it's a great example, I believe. A bicycle is a bicycle, but it's not really. It's an inexpensive form of transportation. It's an exercise option. It has ease of operation, encourages outdoor activity, and can be enjoyed with others. It has a carrying capability, as well as variable speeds and safety devices on the bike, such as brakes and minimal storage, but it has some storage capability. And so there we are. We're talking about now what? The advantages. We are talking about the uniquenesses. And one bike may be more unique than another. It may have more speeds associated with it. It may have more braking capacity without throwing over the handlebars. There's a whole bunch of things that we can be selling of ourselves, just like people might sell, again, a bicycle. Yeah, the weight of the bicycle, if it's going into a racing situation, so on and so forth. So, from a potential customer standpoint, they see the product. They see you as a project manager. But we need to have them take in the message. And what is its advantages? We're talking about that second level, that third level, that fourth level, what you bring to the job. And let me tell you something. Each one of you in this room will have uniquenesses in all 4 of those things. Some of you are IT project managers. Others of you might be in civil engineering project managers. There's a variety and vast array of different kinds of industries that you represent. And as a result of that, you already have a uniqueness by virtue of what you focus on. Now it's what you do and what kinds of things you bring, again, those values to the job. Here are the endorsements, what it achieved. In other words, what you've done in the past have achieved. Feel the connections and the need with those features, like we talked about with the bicycle, a sense of desirability. Are we creating a sense of desirability? If we said we're a project manager, there's really thousands and thousands of those, okay? So what's the desirability? Not much. But if we start talking about all of the various aspects of talent that we bring and specialty that we bring, the go-to person within the achievements and past achievements with viable and recognizable and visible recommendations, as well as endorsements, we have the leg up on the competition because many of them will not do that. So a sense of desirability may feel it essential to have and own. The more that we make it attractive, the more they want to put their arms around it and bring it in. Appropriate to their current lifestyle, meaning that we are engaging them on their territory in a sense that we fit into that territory, or we solve a problem that they have that's perhaps an ongoing problem where they need that particular kind of talent. At the career level, that unique combination of things, we want to talk about the qualities, the background and work experience and results that we bring, the knowledge and education, as well as ongoing knowledge. A couple of our speakers today, and I think we have about 3 or 4 other speakers in the room, a couple of us were talking this morning about the fact that we need, as employees of any kind of job, to be engaged, fully engaged. If you want to have a little fun, go out on Google, hit Google employee engagement, okay? What you will do is you'll come up with 350,000, 700,635,502 different things that you can click on, okay? Why? Why are there so many things under employee engagement? It's because employers are so focused today, not just on what you bring in terms of your capabilities and your talents, but they want to know that you have continuing engagement in your field or within the industry. I went on an interview one time, and I mentioned this to Steve, our speaker this morning. I went on an interview one time, and it was a series of people that I was going to talk to. The first one was the marketing vice president. I walked in the room, we introduced ourselves, I sat down, and the first thing that he asked me was, what's the latest business book that you've read? Interesting. What did that have to do with human resources, right? Well, I did in terms of my staying active, in terms of what's happening within industry, what's happening within leadership, what's happening within the particular perspective of our business community today. Luckily, I hadn't read a book at that time. I think it was the only one that I had read. but nonetheless, I did. It was good to great, and we had an excellent conversation for about 5-6 minutes regarding that book. But again, knowledge and education and staying engaged is extremely important. Your traits, your skills, competencies, and capabilities, as well as we talked about before, personality and characteristics, both mental, attitudinal, emotional, and social. What sells the customer? Well, I think it's pretty simple. We're meeting their needs. The unique combination of all of these attributes that we're starting to talk about here that will give them the best chance for value added. And that's basically what all employers are looking for. And so it requires us connecting on the soft as well as the hard skills. Soft as well as the hard skills. I want to mention that because more and more employers are looking for the soft skills versus, totally the hard skills. So let's take it as an example, communications. Many people would say that that's a skill. Actually, I believe that that's a competency. Tell me about a job today that doesn't require good communications. Okay, there isn't one, I don't believe. And so connecting with the job requirements is extremely important. Connecting with the job content is important. The company culture is important. Physical expectations. Remember that energy, that engagement we talked about before. But also the fact that you have the capacity to be able to handle the job that you are going after. Some jobs are extremely challenging physically, and we need to know how much energy we're willing to spend and move into that next position. Emotional connection with the surroundings. If we are big company people, then perhaps we need to be thinking that that's where our comfort level is. If we are small company people, perhaps that's where our comfort level is. But comfort with the hiring manager and their goals, as well as confident and again, ready to be competitive within the aspects of the work that we do. So requiring these kinds of soft and hard skills, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those as we go along. The personality characteristics, employers' desires fall into a series of questions that will ask of you a little bit of seeking out how mature is this person in the kind of work that they do and the decisions that they make. The determination, again, the employer desires an individual who is determined to get the job done and to make sure that its results, that you maintain a focus towards the results and end game. Integrity, that your word is without question going to be an honorable thing when you say, I'm going to do something and I'm going to provide you with something at this particular time, on this particular day, that you follow through on it. Integrity. Information integration, your intelligence, your ability to be able to take new information and integrate it into making intelligent decisions, as well as good judgment and resourcefulness and a sense of urgency. So these are some of the kinds of things from a personal characteristic standpoint that employers are looking for. Now, how do we represent ourselves as we are talking to an employer, as we are providing a cover letter and a resume to an employer that touches on some of these kinds of things? Our good judgment, our ability to focus on that sense of urgency to get the job done and to move along so that you're taking on the next challenge and the next challenge and the next challenge after that. And so we need to think about how we're going to represent ourselves in terms of our personality. So these mental characteristics assure that an employee performs to an internal set of perceptions beneficial in the most productive and dynamic environments. If we take a look at, let's go back, attitudinal characteristics, They're looking for people who are authentic, not somebody who puts on a face. And so they want to know that what you're telling them is the truth. This is you. This is the true you. They see too many people. I continually talk to human resources people. I'm a part of the HR roundtable, and we meet regularly, and I talk to them all the time about what they are seeing in candidates. And one of the things that they tell me is that they see people putting on these masks and trying to get because they want the job, But it's not really them, or they can't quite sense what really is them. If we are the go-to people, if we are individuals who have achieved in the past, we tend to know that some of those are natural proclivities that come out of us, and we do a good job because we constantly get rewarded and recognized for it. Or every time the boss has someone need, there's a go-to situation. They come to us. Why? Because we're good at it. We tend to naturally be good at certain things as well. And so there's part of our authenticity. It's part of who we are. Have we identified that in ourselves? Because if we can, and we can relate that to an employer successfully in terms of how we've applied it, we have an opportunity to sell them greatly and significantly on who we are. That we're open to suggestions, we're open to conversation, we're open to new ideas, collaborative with others. This is a big thing. We used to call it teamwork, now we call it the collaboration. This is very, very key because every job tends to collaborate either internally or externally, and we need to keep that customer focused. Agreeable in terms of how we accept ideas, and instead of criticizing those ideas, we tend to take them in a brainstorming kind of capacity, in a facilitation kind of capacity, rather than simply going like this when we hear something new. Conscientious, we stick to it, and we get it done, as well as confident in our abilities. Why is it that consultants make a whole ton of money, thousands of dollars per hour of activities? Part of it is their confidence in their ability to be able to do the job. Okay, I have talked to HR people, and I've talked to hiring managers, and I've talked to executives, and they tell me the same thing, that it's not always the person who is most qualified that gets the job, it's the person who is most confident they can do the job that tends to get the job. And so we need to think about how confident are we when we talk about ourselves, when we talk about the things that we can bring to the table for an employer. Are we, in fact, confident that we are the best at what we do? I've had to go through a number of medical tests recently, and as I've gone through those tests, I have phlebotomists. And the phlebotomist will stick you multiple times, oftentimes trying to find that difficult vein. I often tell them, they oftentimes say, you have bad veins. I said, no, there's no such thing as bad veins. There are bad phlebotomists. You don't want to say that. You don't want to say that when you're about to be stuck by a needle. But the fact is that when a phlebotomist approaches me to do one of my tests, the first thing that I ask her is, are you the best phlebotomist that there is? That's what I ask. And you know what? I haven't had one tell me I am. Not one. They all say, well, I'm pretty good. I don't like pretty good. I want to be stuck 3 times when I only need to be stuck once. And so what we're saying here is just as an example of yourself and what you bring to the table. Are you the best at it so that you come across as confidently as possible when you're talking to that employer? Because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for offloading a problem to you and not having it continue to be on their backs. And they want you confident enough to be able to carry that problem to resolution. Emotional characteristics, I'll go through these pretty quick. Even temperament, contemplative, meaning that you think before you act. You go through a process that says this is the right way to do it. That's maturity, if you will. And then we're talking about considerate of others, their ideas, their thoughts, their emotions, their situation, and then highly reliable. And so these are some of the emotional characteristics. Social characteristics Employers desire, what did I say before? Engagement. They want to know that you're just not a 9-to-5er. They can hire 9-to-5ers all day long, and it doesn't work very well. So what is it that you do after 5 o'clock in terms of your profession? You're here. You're here on a Saturday morning, early on a Saturday morning. That's great. That's absolutely great. How many of you are a part of a society where you're going and listening to the speakers every month or every other month talking about some new aspect of project management, some new tools, some new software, something that's going to educate you and bring you forward? I talked one time to an industrial engineer I met at a networking event, and he was having trouble with his job search, and I said, you know, maybe it would help if you got together and networked with some people within your industry and your occupation. He said, you know, I thought about that, but I never acted on it. I think I'll try. And he met another industrial engineer, and they got together for coffee. And then another, and another, and another. And then there were 5 of them, and they met at a Panera someplace. And it turned out that it was becoming a social event. And he said, no, this is not right. This is not helping any of us. How about if at each meeting, each of us take turns, but each of us will research some new aspect of industrial engineering, and we will come up with a 15-minute presentation with a handout for each of us so that we now become more aware of something new, some new trends, some new tools, some new advantages, some new things that are being done in our occupation. Let me tell you that this was extremely beneficial to all 5 of them because they got reemployed very quickly. They were able to go into an interview, and very quickly they were able to say to an employer, I have not worked in that, but I know about it, and I know these particular aspects of it, and the way that I know that is because I learned about it off hours, because I was too busy actually performing my job, but I wanted to make sure I was up to date. Very impressive, and again, that engagement is extremely important today. Fraternal, meaning that we are willing to share with others and that we are willing to group as individuals in terms of sharing ideas, again, social characteristics, communicative, highly communicative, positive in our approach to things, as well as finally respectful of others and, again, their ideas. If we go into work aspects, of course, the hard aspects relate to the work itself. And the hard aspects are background. What is our background that we bring from a work standpoint that's helping us to build into the future for an employer? What is that knowledge and how are we adding to it? The skills, how are we adding to those skills, competencies, as well as abilities? Remember what I said before where I walked into that interview and the guy said, what's the latest business book you've read? First question out of his mouth had nothing to do with HR. So, again, we have to look at what are we bringing also from the standpoint of work aspects to an employer. From background, one of the things that's everybody knows is that people tend to hire people like them. And so there's a tendency to like people from the same industry and a similar occupation. When I was out there looking for work, I was in the high-tech environment, electronics companies. I was always involved in high-technology organizations like AT&T, Northrop Grumman Corporation, North American Phillips Corporation, surrounded by engineers who were contemplating new ideas, new concepts, and highly creative kind of environment. And when I looked for the same industry, I did have a little bit of a problem in 2003 because the bubble had burst and everything in high tech was down, particularly here in Chicago. But people hire people because they come from the same industry, because they relate. They relate to that, as well as similar occupation. They relate. And so chances are the boss that you report to came out of your occupation and has done it before and knows it very, very well. So they tend to hire within that realm. It also gives us the opportunity to understand who to network with and in terms of getting a better understanding of what we bring and our value. So again, our background. Our background relevancy from an employer standpoint is the fundamentals of the company charter and mission. Do you understand what that charter and mission is? Can you talk about it? Many people who go into an interview can't talk about it. They haven't done their research. They haven't looked at it. And this helps you to become unique. In the scope of their business, do you understand that? Product similarities, do you understand that from a background you came from something that's similar, you have an understanding of where those similarities are, perhaps the competition. Customers, do you understand their customers? Have you worked with their customers or similar customers? Market sector as well as buyer decision points. These are extremely important because, again, as project managers, what we are going to be looking at is making some buyer decisions, whether those buyer decisions are financial or whether those buyers are resources within the company in terms of helping you to complete the project that you're on. So what background relevancies do we bring to an employer? Can we talk about those? Can we show that within those we have certain uniquenesses that bring value to an employer? Knowledge relevance, current technology, fundamental processes. Certainly we have the opportunity to say to an employer, by the way, we have current technology that we can bring to the table, and here's the technology. I just did a study on SAP, Oracle, project management tools, and this is what I found is that there's a brand new package that's just come out through SAP that provides us the opportunity to do a better job in looking at life cycle of a project. And here are the aspects of that software. So are we able to take our knowledge and the relevance of that knowledge and talk about it to an employer that makes us unique, rather than just simply saying we have knowledge in terms of project management, and we understand how to use Oracle and or SAP and or project management tools, or can we talk about now the innovations and the things that are coming up the line? Common interfaces, appropriate application of reason and tools, as well as physical mental requirements for, again, the bringing the knowledge to the employer, and understanding of cost benefit, and that's one of the big things that all of us have to look at when we're doing a major project is what is the benefit that we're going to receive, but is this a cost that can be handled within the scope of the budget that we have to handle. And then, of course, contacts. And I can't talk enough about this. It seems as though employers are asking more and more of us as individuals, do we have the contacts that we need in order to handle the decision-making and the problem-solving that comes up in the future? Because we don't stand alone, and many times we don't have every bit of knowledge. So what is our contact list? Here, in this organization, you have leaders. You have individuals who have taken leadership roles and stepped forward in their leadership of this organization and giving you the new tools, the new aspects of your work on a periodic basis, okay? And so what are their contacts? What are their contacts, the other leaders of the group? They can pick up a phone, get that person not only to return the call, but even answer the call when they call, and ask them a key question. What do you know about this? This is something that just came up. What do you know about it? Because what happens is that you don't have to go through a course. You don't have to go through getting a new certification. Not to put it down in any way, but just simply to say that you have an opportunity to now move forward more quickly because you have the right contacts and connections. Skill relevance, working with the tools, of course, is important. How have we worked with the tools? Can the employer, can you tell the employer specifically that these are the tools that you've worked with? That in other cases, you've worked within organizations that have used these tools, those tools. You understand some of the differences and the nuances of it. The equipment and the automation of that equipment, processes, application, and use of capacity, and then understanding the rules, limits, the guidelines, controls, regulations. How can we sell ourselves uniquely in these particular areas? I had an individual who I talked to and helped in his career path, and one of the things that he neglected entirely in his resume as well as in his conversations and practice interviews was his tremendous knowledge of military specifications, as well as his knowledge of military specifications, US, Canada, and Australia. And as a result of picking up on that and talking about his knowledge of that, he was able to incorporate that into his resume, he was able to incorporate that into his interviews, and within a matter of 2 weeks, he had an offer from Boeing. Why? Because they sell aircraft, military aircraft, to those organizations that have, again, regulations, they have standards, they have military specs, and he knew those. But it was missing. It was part of his uniqueness, and he pulled it out, and he was able to get a job almost immediately. Competency, relevance, we're talking about adaptability and flexibility. I think I heard that word adaptability earlier this morning with our keynoter. Extremely important that we have the ability to be able to shift quickly because of the amount of change that's out there. They were saying that any new product that comes out on the market has approximately 6 months before a competitor comes along with a similar product at less cost. Doesn't matter where it comes from, China, India, wherever it comes from, 6 months. And then they have to do something to change that product, add a bell or a whistle to it, to make it different from the competitors, to stay ahead of the competition. We also have to be adaptable and flexible. We're adding those bells and whistles by adding to our knowledge base, our skill base, and so on. Communications, our competencies and relevancies in communications, complex analysis, as well as problem solving, strong business acumen, working with change, listening, persuading, all of these kinds of, how have we presented ourselves to an employer in terms of our ability to persuade when we know that this is the best direction to go for value added as well as for completion on time of the product and or the project. So we need to think about this, some of these competencies, okay? Here's some additional competencies. How about your negotiation skills? Have you talked about those in an interview and how your capabilities in negotiating have helped you over the hurdles that have come up in order to problem solve? Your people sense, your ability to make judgments in regards to people and how to use people effectively in a project using, again, their particular significant values that they bring in order to complete your project. Dignity, mentoring, motivating, these are other people's senses. Your credibility, again, we talked about, again, your integrity. Are you a person of your word? And that's another thing that they continually look at because they have people who make promises that they never keep, and that's one of the problems that they have. I don't know if you know it or not, but 60% of hires, from the standpoint of the hiring manager, they have buyer's remorse. 60%. And you know what? That's typically within 10 days. Work days. Within 10 days, they say, I'm sorry I hired this person. Part of it is that mask that I was talking about. They weren't authentic when they, again, talked about themselves and their background and so on. But the other is that they really didn't do a good job in saying, this is where my strengths are, this is where my passion is, this is who I am, and this is where my recognition comes from, and I'm the go-to person in that capacity. And so, are we measuring? Do we have capability in terms of our competencies to be able to measure our successes? What measures do we use to understand that we are being successful? And then planning, integration, and implementation, which are all part of the life cycle, again, of any project that we might be working on. So additional ones that they desire, strategic understanding. We have seen clerical jobs asking for a better perspective of how their role fits in to the overall picture of the company and where they add value to the end result. Strategic understanding. Do you have a strategic understanding of the role that you would play in the significance of it and the value of it with the company? Influencing, they're looking, again, how do you influence others and you know, without shouting, screaming, hollering, and using a club, as well as fostering innovation, creative thinking, and ingenuity. I think we heard that also this morning in our keynote. And then encouraging high performance, both yourself and others, as well as empowering others to do the job and to carry forth, again, towards the mission and, if you will, the outcome of the project. So our ability relevances then bring together all of the above into a strong team environment, meaning that we now look at the employer, and the employer is saying to us, I need somebody who helps me grow the business. You may not see it in the project that you're working on because it really doesn't have an end that provides a monetary return as some other might. Perhaps it's an upgrade of a software tool or something, but whatever. They're looking for individual. How have you helped to grow the business of your past employers? Have you had the opportunity to do that? And if you have, talk about it with passion.